Hi, welcome to lesson number 18, QRM, which is Quality Risk Management. And in this lesson, we will go through the following objectives, namely the introduction of the ICH guidelines, Q9. We'll go through and just show you the chapter on quality risk management and a little bit of background on that. I would encourage some additional reading on that chapter. There is a link in the supplementary material to this. I'll talk about risk management and what QRM is, as well as some key definitions, namely risk control, the risk management cycle and what's involved with that, some risk management tools, and of course the advantages of quality risk management. So, like as I previously mentioned, the ICH guidelines are split into various different chapters, if you like, and Q9 is in relation to quality risk management, or QRM. Again, do open that link and take a look at that chapter and have some take some time to read through it. The link is here. Again, if you open it, you are familiar with the ICH website, but if you go into the quality guidelines here, all the different chapters are listed. So the quality risk management one is here, and you go across to open it. And again, read through this at your leisure. There's some good reading information in this. We do talk about some of these things here in the slides, so there's a little bit of additional background reading when you get time on that. So the other guideline is the ISO 14971. Now, the ISO guidelines are a paid subscription to those, so you can't actually access them online, or I can't access them online without paying. So you can go onto the ISO website and it gives you a little bit of background on them, but to read the actual guidelines themselves, it's a paid subscription, so I don't have a link there for that. So let me begin just by talking through what risk management is. It's probably a new term for some of you. You may not have heard it being used before. So it's really a process that's used to identify all relevant risks in your process. And then you can assess those risks and rank the risks in order of severity. So it addresses the risks in order of priority, and then you can monitor these risks and report on how you're managing them in your process. So the next question is, why would you want to do this? So it promotes good management, so it increases the probability of positive events and reduces the occurrence of negative events or deviations, out of trends, outliers, out of specifications, defective products, and it is a regulatory requirement to have quality risk management in place. What is a risk? So a risk is an uncertain event which may occur in the future. A risk may prevent or delay the achievement of an organization's or unit's objectives or goals. And a risk is not certain. Its likelihood can only be estimated during your risk assessment. So QRM really, I suppose holistically, if you look at it, you can think of it as a systematic process to coordinate and facilitate a science-based decision-making process of improving your quality with respect to the generating risk within that quality. So reading down, it's a systematic process for the assessment, for the control, the communication and review of risk to the quality of the drug or the medicinal product across the product's life cycle. The evaluation of the risk to quality should be based on scientific knowledge and should link to the protection of the patient. Quality risk management team members should include experts from the appropriate areas, for example, quality units, engineering, production, reg affairs, sales, warehouse, wherever it may be, and these individuals should be knowledgeable about the quality risk management process within their area. This little slide here just shows the link between the three terms, quality, risk and management. So quality being the degree to which a set of inherent properties of a product, system or process fulfills requirements. Risk being the combination of the probability of occurrence of harm and the severity of that harm. And finally, management is a systematic process for the assessment, control, communication and review of risks to the quality of the drug product across the product life cycle. So it's just a little visual of what we spoke about previously. So some definitions that I'd like to explain a little bit further, because there's quite a few definitions associated with QRM. And the first one is risk identification. So this is where you decide what might go wrong. And to dig a bit further into that, it's a systematic use of information to identify hazards, referring to the risk problem or the risk description. Information can include things like historical data or theoretical analysis, or even concerns of customers or stakeholders. Risk identification addresses the what might go wrong question, including identifying the possible consequences. And this provides the basis for further steps in the quality risk management process. So that's step number one. And then you do your risk analysis, which is really considering what the likelihood is of this risk occurring. And if so, what are the consequences or severity of that risk, or how detectable is that risk? So risk analysis really is an estimation of the risk associated with the identified hazard. It's the qualitative or quantitative process of linking the likelihood of occurrence of that hazard and the severity of harm. In some risk management tools, the ability to detect harm also factors into the estimation of the risk. So the next one then is the risk evaluation. So that compares the identified and the analysed risk against the given risk criteria. They consider the strength of evidence for all three of the fundamental questions. So you compare the identified and the analysed risk against certain criteria to see the strength or the likelihood of this happening, and you give it a 1 to 5 criteria. Risk reduction then is the process for mitigation or avoidance of quality risk when it exceeds a specified level or if it falls outside the expected range. Risk reduction might include actions taken to mitigate the severity and the probability of harm. Processes that improve the detectability of hazards and quality risks might also be used as part of a risk control strategy. The implementation of risk reduction measures can introduce new risks into the system or increase the significance of other risks. Hence, it might be appropriate to revisit the risk assessment to identify and evaluate any possible change in risk after implementing a risk reduction process. And finally, risk acceptance is a decision to accept your risk. And risk acceptance can be a formal decision to accept the risk, or it can be a passive decision in which residual risks are not specified. For some types of harms or hazards, even the best quality risk management practices might not entirely eliminate that risk. And in these circumstances, it might be agreed that an appropriate risk management strategy has been applied and that quality risk is reduced to a specified or acceptable level. Of course, that can only happen on a case-by-case basis. So risk control, what we talked about risk control involves decision making to reduce or accept risks. The amount of effort used for risk control should be proportional to the significance of the risk. So again, we talked about scaling our risks. So you're going to put a lot of effort into a risk that has a more likelihood of occurring than a lower risk incident. Decision makers might use different processes, including benefit cost analysis, for understanding the optimal level of risk control. And risk control might focus on some of the questions like, is the risk above an acceptable level? What can be done to reduce or eliminate the risk? What is the appropriate balance among the benefits, the risks and the resources? And are new risks, which is an important point, are new risks introduced as a result of the identified risk being controlled? So there could be a knock-on effect down towards the latter end of the process. New risks may be introduced to the risk control measures taken or may increase the significance of other risks, so may need to go back to the risk assessment, identify and evaluate any possible changes. So we'll talk a little bit more about this risk management cycle. The first step in any risk management cycle or risk management process is to identify your risk. And this is where you and your team uncover, recognize and describe risks that might affect your project or your process, as well as the outcomes of that risk. And there are a number of techniques that you can use to find project risks, mind mapping and brainstorming being two obvious ones among your team. Step 2 then is to analyze the risk, where once risks are identified, you determine the likelihood and the consequences of each risk, and you develop an understanding of the nature of the risk and its potential to affect project goals and objectives. You evaluate and you rank your risks. So you evaluate or rank the risks by determining the risk magnitude, which is the combination of likelihood and consequence, and you make decisions about whether the risk is acceptable or whether it is serious enough to warrant treatment. You treat the risk, or you take action. So during this step, you assess the highest ranked risk and you set out a plan to treat or modify these risks to achieve acceptable low-level risks. How can you maximize the probability of negative risks as well as enhancing the opportunities? So you create risk mitigation strategies, which really are preventative plans, or like CAPA's corrective and preventative actions. They're like contingency steps that you put in place. And then finally, you monitor and review. So this is the step where you monitor, you track, and you review all your risks associated with the process. This is a typical example of a quality risk management process. You can see it's divided into various different sections. The first one being where you initiate your quality risk process, and this one here is your risk assessment. So this is where you're looking at your trying to look at the risks and determine their level. This is your risk control, where you're trying to reduce those risks and consider what is an acceptable level. Your output then and your risk review are once you put your CAPAs in place, you do this review to make sure that your risks are under control. And all of these processes here are flanked on either side by risk communication and risk management tools. So they're an important control factors either side, which ensures that your QRM is working constantly. So we talked about risk management tools that can be used. Some of them, again, the ICH goes into a lot more detail on these, but just to list them below, some of the tools that are available to identify hazards and assess risks are things like basic risk management methods like flow charts, check sheets, etc. You can use preliminary hazard analysis, or PHAs. Failure mode effects and criticality analysis is another one you might have heard. They're called FMECAs or FMEAs for short. Fault tree analysis, FTAs, hazard analysis and critical control points, as well as hazard operability analysis. Again, the link to the ICH will explain all these in further detail. So I mentioned previously some of the back to this slide, some of the risk management methods like flowcharts and check sheets. I just wanted to jog your memory. We talked about these in previous slides. So process flowcharts as well as run charts and control charts are important, and they'll give you how your process, information and data on how your process is performing over time. We talked previously about cause and effect diagrams or fishbone diagrams. Check sheets then are an obvious one, histograms and Pareto analysis. They'll all give you concrete data on how your process is performing and where your possible risks are. So some of the advantages of having a QRM system are, firstly, it helps in CAPA, which is promoting continuous quality improvement. Corrective and preventative actions are a great way of identifying your risks, implementing an action to ensure that those risks are controlled at all times, and following up on those actions and making sure that they are implemented. QRM improves decision making, so it identifies what gives the most benefit to the patient, and fewer failures then are a result of a QRM process. It's scientific and it's completely data driven, so it reduces subjectivity. It's completely based on fact. It ranks risks and allows prioritization of those risks, so there's better use of resources, better use of time and cost. There's a recognition then of responsibility and accountability for each risk that's been identified. And it's a means of, again, building quality into your product. So if you have a QRM system in place, you'll identify where the possible risks are. So your chances of right first time obviously increases. This is just a summary then of what we spoke about with respect to QRM. Quality risk management is a process that supports a science-based and practical decision-making strategy when it's implemented into your quality systems. It provides documented and reproducible methods to accomplish steps to the quality risk management process. Appropriate use of QRM does not eliminate the industry's obligation to comply with regulatory requirements. So you need to be cognizant of the regulations around QRM also. So that's the final slide. Thank you for listening.